But for more, let's bring in Scott Lucas. He's a professor of US and international politics at the Clinton Institute at University College Dublin. Thanks so much for being with us on the programme. As we've been saying, there is limited detail about what exactly will happen during phase 2 and phase 3 of this deal. Are you confident that this ceasefire will hold, and how difficult will it be to implement?
Well, I think the best way to answer that question is to lay out a few facts about what we know. First, we need to have confirmation from the Israeli cabinet tomorrow, including Prime Minister Netanyahu, that they accept the ceasefire deal. And significantly, Netanyahu is not going to make a statement until that occurs. So he is still dealing with hard right ministers in the cabinet, such as the finance minister, such as the national security minister, who have threatened to resign. So we hope this holds. We hope the Israeli cabinet approves, but that's the first hurdle. Now, the second thing that must be pointed out is that this is only an interim ceasefire deal. As you're noting, we only get a ceasefire for 6 weeks in phase 1. Now, that's to be welcomed. We will get the return of 33 hostages in exchange for more than 1,200 Palestinian prisoners, and we'll get a gradual Israeli withdrawal from part of the Gaza Strip. But, and here's the third thing, we will not get a full withdrawal of Israel from the Gaza Strip. That remains for phase 2, especially the Israeli troops on the Egypt border in the Philadelphia corridor. And I think this may be the key thing to watch in phase 2 is that both the US and Israel have said Hamas must not be allowed to govern Gaza. But of course, Hamas is insisting that we are the government of Gaza. Now, that's going to have to be resolved in phase 2 for there to be a lasting ceasefire. And to bring it back to Benjamin Netanyahu, having said that he would absolutely destroy Hamas, would he ever be in a political position to accept Hamas continuing to govern in the Gaza Strip?
Well, does that mean that Hamas will be excluded then completely from post-war talks? And have Netanyahu's objectives been achieved here? As you say, he has said right from the beginning that this war won't end until Hamas is completely destroyed.
In the sense that, Hamas is not completely destroyed, quite clearly, despite the loss of many of its leaders, including Yahya Sinwar and the planner of the October 7th mass killings, Mohammed Daif. Hamas is still there. And indeed, they've been able to recruit new members. So Netanyahu has failed to destroy Hamas, which leaves us with this, that the US and Israel and other countries, they talk maybe about the Palestinian Authority leading a Gaza government. There's been talk about a Palestinian coalition. At times, there's been talks about other countries being involved in a peacekeeping force in Gaza. None of that has been resolved. And certainly Hamas has not agreed that it will simply step aside and exile itself or melt away with no power. So again, I welcome the fact that we will get a ceasefire for 6 weeks, but I think there's great caution here, which is unless we get a resolution about who is in power in Gaza, there may not be an extension of this ceasefire and there may be a resumption of the killing.
And Lucas, also some observers have been pointing out that the detail in phase 1 of this deal, it appears more focused on the hostage release aspect rather than on ending the war specifically. Is that something that you've noticed?
Well, it is. The emphasis is on the timing of the hostage release for the prisoners, because that's what Benjamin Netanyahu had to have. If Netanyahu could not destroy Hamas for his own political survival, he has to get the hostages back. Because I must reiterate this, while both Hamas and Netanyahu carry responsibility for this mass killing, if Benjamin Netanyahu gets a ceasefire without getting the hostages back, he faces early elections and he faces the resumption of the trial for bribery charges that could see him get a prison sentence. So he must get those hostages back, which is why they are so prominent in phase 1, rather than a clear commitment to a full Israeli withdrawal.
And how much pressure then is Netanyahu under tonight? We had one of his far-right ministers coming out to describe this deal as dangerous.
I think at this point, what Netanyahu has done is he's tacked back to those who have criticized him for months for not getting a deal to get some hostages back. That includes not only the families of the hostages, it includes opposition leaders, it includes former members of his war cabinet, like Benny Gantz. They are supporting the deal. Now Netanyahu faces the hard right minister. You're referring to Yitzhak Ben-Gvir, the national security minister, who has said he will not accept this deal. He has called on the finance minister, Mr. Smotrich, to join him. If the two of them agree to resign from the cabinet, then I think there's a serious problem for Netanyahu. He can afford to lose one minister, but not two. But watch for this. There may be a deal struck to keep those two ministers on board for the Gaza ceasefire. Netanyahu will agree with them that Israel can expand its settlements in the occupied West Bank, even though those settlements are illegal under international law, which means that we may get a Gaza ceasefire, but a transfer of problems to the West Bank in order to get at least that temporary stop to the mass killing.
And we've seen this evening, not long after that ceasefire was announced, that 5 Palestinians were actually killed in the West Bank. Scott, we'll have to leave it there for now, but thank you so much for being with us on the programme. That's Scott Lucas. He's a professor of US and international politics at University College Dublin.
Thank you.
Thank you.